My name is Victor Wishna, and I love Weird Al Yankovic.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and for me, it's Friday, May 6th. For you, it is Sunday, May 8th, which is also Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to Mom and my sister and all the mothers listening today or on another day. You may not be making time on Mother's Day to listen to a podcast. I'm recording this early and quickly because I am about to get on a plane and go to Boston for a podcast doubleheader. Off to see the Doughboys. This is the show that I was meant to go on to see in January as my, it was the emotional carrot at the end of finishing chemotherapy. And it got rescheduled, as many things did, due to Omicron. I think January was Omicron. Maybe it was Delta. And rescheduled. So I'm very excited to be getting on a plane tonight. I have had my second booster shot. I plan on wearing a mask, a KN95 on the plane, and heading out to Boston to meet some Domies in person and finally see a live Doughboys show. And I'm very excited for that. Last Sunday, I saw Letterkenny live, which was a blast, an absolute blast. So yeah, I'm just seeing all the live shows, and I talk more about it in today's interview. The interview is with playwright and journalist Victor Wishna, who we have people in common. We tell our whole story of how we know each other. So I think what I should do is maybe cut the introduction short and just introduce you to Victor Wishna. And we are talking a bit about Jewish geography up front, and then Weird Al. It's a very fun conversation. It's Victor's first full podcast episode, and you wouldn't know it for the ease of talking we had. So with that, wear your mask, wash your hands, get your booster, and keep enjoying your favorite things. Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where we get recommendations without using an algorithm. Today, I am joined by Victor Wishna. Victor is an author, editor, playwright, commentator who has composed a dozen plays. His newest play is called The Tree of Life and is currently touring nationally with the Jewish Plays Project. And it is a finalist in the 2022 National Jewish Playwriting Contest. And that is how we know each other. And we'll get into that. So, Victor, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you for inviting me on. This is very exciting.
I'm so excited to have you here. You are in Kansas City?
I am. I'm in Leawood, Kansas, a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay. So, wait.
Yes. I'm in Kansas City.
But you identify as a suburb of the Missouri side of Kansas City despite living in Kansas?
Oh, wow. This could be an entire conversation on its own, and all the more challenging in an audio medium, because I used to, like when I went to college, I even would sketch out a map to show, I was going to say friends from the coast, but really anywhere outside of Kansas City, because they would say, oh, are you from Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri? Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, well, I'm from Kansas, but I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. Like when you say Kansas City, you mean the Kansas City, Missouri metropolitan area. Okay. There is a Kansas City, Kansas directly across the river on the Kansas side, but it's a much smaller city. And so there aren't really any suburbs of Kansas City, Kansas. Kansas City, Kansas is part of the KC, Missouri, metro area, if that makes sense. And this is challenging for people.
So at some level, they are twin cities where one city is the monster twin and one is the baby twin. Or not even that. Like Kansas City, Kansas is a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah, except that it's a lot of it's very urban. So it's weird because it's mostly not suburban. It's this, you didn't know this is what we were going to be talking
No.
about today, did you? Yeah, that's why I would go around with I could draw like the northeast corner of Kansas and where it hits Missouri. And so like where I'm sitting right now, I'm half a mile from Missouri.
Okay.
Like I'm in there's State Line Road is the next major road to the east of me.
Nice.
And then that is like, I think literally the east side of that street is Missouri, and the west side is still Kansas.
Yeah.
And you can tell in the winter because literally the northbound side won't be plowed because Kansas City, Missouri has more issues with that than the Kansas side. So he like literally goes up to the state line.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm sorry I brought this upon us. Yeah.
No, it's great.
This
I've got friends that
conversation,
live. I've got like friends who live there, and I've been there for work. And it's sort of no matter how many times I get this explanation, it has yet to sink in. So I don't regret getting it again today.
Right. We can cut this and say I'll say I'm from Kansas City, and then I'll let you go on with what
No, this is
what
great.
you were supposed to say. But I think I identify. I think you put it best at the beginning. So I identify. My mailing address doesn't say Kansas City, Missouri, but I say I'm from Kansas City.
Yeah.
And that's the area.
Great. We got to know each other, and this is related to your play. A few years ago, 4 years ago maybe at this point,
Yeah, just not quite 4 years ago, exactly. Yeah.
one of my best friends, Erin Jones, no relation, but we were friends from synagogue. She and her husband were stationed in Paraguay with the State Department and involved in the local Jewish community there. And Asunción has like a vibrant enough Jewish community that, like the joke about Jews on a desert island, had 2 synagogues. Because you got to have the one you don't go to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they were part of an egalitarian synagogue or new community that got a lead on a Torah scroll coming out of Ottumwa, Iowa. And she was like, Leah, you know everyone. How do we get this Torah scroll from Iowa to Kansas City? And I posted it, and my friend Carolyn made some comments, and Katie, our mutual friend, Katie Berger, made comments. The pieces came together so fast.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
incredibly fast.
Yeah, I mean in fact, I went back and checked. It was like, I think June of 2018.
Okay.
I got an email, and Katie Berger, who's my sister-in-law,
yeah.
actually, and is a friend of yours, Michelle, forwarded this email to several of us, at least, in Kansas City. Your email, exactly the story you just told, that you had this friend in Paraguay who needed to get a Torah from Ottumwa, Iowa to Kansas City, yada yada. And I thought that was so cool, but I wasn't quick enough. I was more than willing to. I think it's about, not to talk too much about geography again, but it's, between Kansas City, and it's about halfway between here and Chicago. It's like 4 hours to southeast Iowa. Excuse me. And I would have loved that, to gone up and gotten the tour and come back, but there's already, that part was already taken care of. And then the next best thing happened, because I'm also a freelance journalist, and I was am a correspondent for Jewish Telegraphic Agency. And so 2 minutes after my disappointment of not getting to personally be involved in this, the scope of this story was already appealing to me, of this Torah, and this possibly antique Torah now about to travel thousands of miles, not from the quote unquote old country to America, but from one America to South America, and the story continues, yada yada yada. And I was like, oh well, if I'm not directly involved, I can report the story.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the players involved, and so I pitched it to JTA, and I think that's how you and I wound up first talking, is because you were, if not my, probably my very first contact for that story, to put me in touch with Erin in Paraguay, and it was just it was such a great story to report, because the story really became about the group of relative strangers. Well, not even relative, just they were strangers to each other in a lot of ways. The people that had to, including you and I, until the moment, had to come together to get this Torah. Somebody's cousins were on their way to Fairfield, Iowa, and were driving through Ottumwa, so they wound up being the ones to grab it, but then they couldn't keep it, so they dropped it off at someone else's house in Kansas City, and then Erin's, I think it was her brother or something,
her
came
sister
to
and brother-in-law, yeah.
Yeah, I have to reread the story I wound up writing to put all the pieces together, but then also just the story of how this community in Paraguay, that the way Aaron told the story is that, they're like, oh, you're from America. There are a lot of Torahs in America. Maybe you know someone. And she was like, and then I think that's probably she reached out to you. And then just how the connection got made from this little synagogue in Atumwa looking to, they were decommissioning and looking to give away their ritual objects. And that the coincidences that had to happen and I'm not going to retell the whole story in part because I don't remember all the details of the actual story.
But there was
a rabbi,
it was
so fascinating.
A liberal rabbi. And when we say liberal, we don't necessarily mean politically liberal. We mean liberal in the Jewish observance, who maybe was like a rabbi in Colombia. I feel like he wasn't the Paraguay rabbi, but he was a rabbi in the mix in South America.
It is coming back. It's Rabbi Juan Mejia, who does a lot of work like B'chol Lashon, and is actually, I believe now, or at least was a couple years, based in Oklahoma City. And it's all coming back to me now. He was in Iowa City because was close with Rabbi Esther Hugenholtz. Yep. Yes, in Iowa City, and one of the congregants originally from Atumwa. There are a lot of former Atumwans in Iowa City, and that's so. Yes, Rabbi Mejia found out about it, and it was a week later. I think he happened to be at a wedding in Colombia, where one of the heads of the new egalitarian minyan in Asuncion was also at that wedding, and they talked and said, "Oh, we're looking for a Torah." And Rabbi Mejia was like, "Funny, you should mention that. I was just in Iowa," and and then so that coincidence, and then how to actually get it there was a big part of the story.
It still gives me chills to think about all the things that had to happen to get that Torah to its new home in Asuncion. It was remarkable.
Yes, and it got lost. It didn't get lost, but it was not. It didn't. I remember now. Aaron's parents flew it. It got they packed it in a hard golf case, like how you transport golf clubs on a flight, and I think it got rerouted, and so it actually arrived like on a different flight. A day later. I mean, it was
which was
very all with a happy ending down there.
Like the nightmare and nightmare to have because we couldn't figure out how to should they get it a chair. Like, should he buy it?
Buy it a ticket,
seat so it can ride in the cabin, and ultimately landed on a hard case golf suitcase. Yeah, and then it got rerouted, and her sister got to Paraguay, and the Torah didn't, and the Torah made it a day later, but then the whole congregation met it at the airport, and they danced with it. The videos were phenomenal.
Yeah. After midnight, I think, is like when it finally... Yeah, and just that story, I mean, even while I was reporting it, and just and then of course just the history of both, the both ends of that story, the fact that even down to the point that the community in Iowa, they'd had a few Torahs, and one of them they knew, had been the gift of the great grandparents of one of the last members still there. But this Torah in particular, they didn't know exactly where it was from. I mean, in all likelihood, it was purchased in the United States or commissioned by a scribe, in Chicago or New York or something. But it was not out of the realm of possibility that it had come from Russia or Poland or something. They didn't know the exact age of it. So just this story of this Torah, this, that is the embodiment of Jewish, kind of like Judaism is the stories we tell, and the Torah is the embodiment of our story and how it had been moving. It's just, it was theatrical and dramatic to me, sort of from the from the beginning.
So you took kernels of that story and wrote a whole play, a whole 2-act full-length play called Tree of Life.
Yeah, the whole Megillah, I guess, but a Torah and a play. Wow, cut that, please. No,
all puns stay.
Yeah, I know. Right, especially the part where I say cut that. I listen to podcasts. I know how this works. Yeah, it's really from the beginning of when the story ran, which was just a few weeks after you and I, it was that summer of 2018. People were like, "Oh, you should." People who knew I was also a playwright, said, "Oh, you should dramatize this." And I was like, "Well, no. How do you dramatize something that? I mean, you can dramatize anything. That's what I love about theater." But it was elements of this. I mean, what really spoke to me was this idea of just the bittersweetness of the story and the fact that it really. it touched on what, like why I personally felt connected to it is because that's what, to me, that's what is, I don't want to say important about being Jewish. It's not like one thing. The meaning that I get from being Jewish can, in all of the different ways that manifests itself, kind of all comes back to the idea that that you're part of a community, both whether that's locally, some of the people you get to know you're closest to come from that, but you're part of the Jewish people in general, and you're part of a larger story that started before you, that is, that no matter how things go for you is going to continue in one way or another after you. And that's, that's not some idea that I happened on. I feel like that's the idea of Judaism. I think I was reading, I think it was Jonathan Sachs was talking about it, where it was, when you realize it in that context and you look at Jewish history, you realize it's a lot easier to, like, it's really easy to find meaning and to get through your worst day when you realize you're part of a bigger story. And this, and then I found the way to sort of explore that idea without leaving this tiny little synagogue in the play. It's a fictional, it's obviously based on that synagogue, but it's fictional, and the town in Iowa is fictional, but could be any of dozens, because that's it too. It's not like Atumwa was representative of American Judaism in the end of the 19th century, early 20th century, where they were staking out communities that were, they're going to be the next, if not the next Jerusalem, maybe the next Vilna, or something. It wasn't, they were, so these synagogues that exist in these little towns were meant to be, monuments to a community that was only going to grow and thrive in this new land. And so, and that's a story throughout Jewish history, obviously, and then the idea that that the story continued and that there's a new community that also has ancient roots arising. In the play, I set it in Columbia. I made it a community of Anusim, or which was not necessarily Aaron's community in Asuncion. They were mostly Ashkenaz, and had traced their roots also 100 years back to European immigrants, but just fascinated into the fact that hundreds of thousands of South Americans have rediscovered some Jewish roots, and some of them have taken that and made it part of their daily lives, and are starting a new old life. It's that part of it. I want to explore that part of the story as well, and how the story continues, that the world is a circle, the Torah itself is a circle, life is I'll stop throwing all the cliches and themes, but I was like, I can explore all this stuff, and the set can just be this little synagogue in Iowa, which I think would be intriguing to people too.
Yeah, it's intriguing to people who want to produce the play. They don't have to do right. I think one of the other things about the story as many of us experienced it was how digital, unless you were the person with your hands on the Torah, the involvement was digital, right? Right. So for so many of us, it was connecting people. It was buying a suitcase off of Amazon. It was about connection but we all just sat in our computers around the country doing it. So a less compelling staged play. And
but the idea of connection is the same. What you're talking about is that it's, that internet links provided, in whatever form that is, email or, and even these communities that are reemerging in South America, a lot of them, they're finding each other because of the internet. I mean, to get together to find, 10 people for a minyan is they're gathering online, and then they're gathering in person. Obviously this was pre-COVID, and but it's, so yes, it wasn't, it enabled connections that otherwise, so that was part of the story too, was, ancient connections and modern links, both in literal and internet, that enabled those connections that may not otherwise have reemerged, and for this story too.
So tell me a little bit about the Jewish Plays Project. They produce some of the play as an audio drama. So it exists partly as a podcast.
Yes.
But tell me about the National Jewish Playwriting Contest.
Okay. So, and they are, so the National Jewish Playwriting Contest is the way that my play Tree of Life got involved. I was very excited and fortunate that it was selected as one of 7 finalists in this year's Jewish Playwriting Contest. And it is a contest. The word contest is in the name, and there will ultimately be a winner. I think that we'll have a workshop production in New York in 2023. Okay. I think. I mean, there's COVID is still backlogging things, but really it's more. It's the Jewish Plays Project is the organization that runs it, but by being part of it, it's really more it's like the process. They are advocating for all 7 of these, as well as other plays that received semifinalist or honorable mention status. And so as you were starting to describe, so we've been meeting, like the playwrights and some of the producers. We've had multiple Zoom meetings and gotten to know each other. We've read each other's work and worked with Heather Linsky as the dramaturg for the project, and like I was going to say sat down with us, but sat down with our Zoom screens, and we're able to go over it. And even already, I've met a couple of directors and producers who were on the reading panel for it. And so it's really it feels more like being part of a project, a Jewish Plays project, rather than being a contestant. And what you're referring to about the excerpts is there are live and online excerpts. It's cool what they do. And this is why it's more just by being part of it, your work gets exposed. There are, I believe, 8 different Jewish associated theaters or community centers or events at synagogues that are performing live excerpts of this. So it's very cool so that my play in the next several weeks will be in 20-minute excerpts of it, with other plays are going to be performed live for audiences in Charlotte and Palo Alto, or actually Los Altos in the Bay Area. There is one in the Chicago area that's not, I think because of COVID, they're not doing a live version of it, but they had they each community chooses 3 of the plays they want to do excerpts of. There's one, it will also be in Renana in Israel. There's Center Stage Israel is participating, and it's great. And then what you're referring to, there is also a national, and if anybody's interested, they can go to jewishplaysproject.org, and we recorded, and it was really wonderful working with Joshua Silverstein was the director who I worked with, and 3 actors who excerpted 2 of the scenes from the play as a podcast. So it's not just for theater fans, it's for podcast fans as well. Each play is presented as about a 15, 20-minute podcast. And then if you are so inclined, you can vote for which of the plays excerpts you prefer or think is worthy, however you want to think about it.
Well, I will say a bit more pandering. Maybe pandering's the wrong word. If you're listening to this podcast and you're listening to Victor and I talk, first of all, do listen to the excerpts, but then vote for Tree of Life. And the other ones you find worthy. But I'm just going to say, we are here cheering on Victor's play, Victor's efforts, and the Tree of Life in particular. So while he was very gracious and humble, I will say vote for Victor. Victory for Victor.
And it's a podcast, but I'm just sitting here silently nodding. I feel like that's the appropriate way to do that.
It is really,
well, thank you. Yeah.
There's very good sound design. The actors are tremendous. I do want to try and download a few more for my flight tonight, because I think it'll be good plain listening. So.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Yeah. And it is, and I will just say, the play is very different from. It's inspired, obviously, by the story that we spent a lot of time now just talking about. But I brought in other themes that I want to talk about in the play. It's about this idea that there's a small synagogue that's decommissioning. A grad student from Columbia who has rediscovered her Jewish roots is coming there, but really the rest of the community intends for her to take their last Torah scroll back. And there's one remaining member who resists, which is not at all what happened in the real story. The real story was bittersweet, but it was also this beautiful tale of the community of Tama wanting to find a home for this Torah. And I was just intrigued by the idea of the pain of that and exploring that through a character. So I just want to be clear about that that's a different idea that I put in there.
It is inspired by true events. It is not based on true events.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way of putting it. So.
And so while it is the story of a small synagogue in Iowa closing, so many synagogues in North America are facing the same challenges. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I wrote it during, like, the story was from 2018 when you and I first, connected, but I wound up writing it in the last, in 2021.
Yeah.
It had been lingering. And I don't want to say, oh, this was my COVID play or something, but, there's no question that idea of community, that idea of what it means to be together, was just heightened when we found ourselves, obviously in general, but to your point specifically, like for those of us for whom synagogue life is a major source of our sense of community and connection and identity, what it was like to be in a situation where that was just not possible physically, and that really just heightened the themes that I was already feeling about this particular story, and that we're, like, yes, as you said, that this community is going through it not for COVID reasons, just for some of the demographic transitions that are also still ongoing, even whether COVID had never happened or not, but has just heightened it as well.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this. We aren't here only to talk about, I think it's very clear we could spend the next hour talking about Jewish life. But we bandied about a few topics, and you decided we're going to dive in, we're going to get really specific on one performer who's not Jewish, although sometimes his name sounds very Jewish. It's kind of confusing. We're going to talk about Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah, let's talk about Weird Al Yankovic.
Yes. I'm so excited. I am so excited to talk about Weird Al today.
I was so excited when I heard that you were excited.
Yes. So let's start at the beginning for you. Do you remember your first Weird Al tape, or like how did you first encounter Weird Al?
I anticipated you might ask this, and I'm trying to think. I mean, I think the right answer is that there was a friend of mine had a cassette. And it was probably Weird Al in 3D. It was not his first one, but his first big one, the one with Eat It and others. And I'm picturing it was a tape, because it was that was the cutting edge.
Yes.
That was the cutting edge audio medium at the time. But really it's just that it's just always been with me. Like, I mean, there probably was a time when I guess when I was 6 or younger, that I was not aware of his existence or charmed by it. But so it's just since then it's never not been part of my life. I'll say that. So
you think you were like a first or second grade, you found Weird Al early?
Oh yeah. Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, I was, because actually my son, who's 8, is in second grade right now. And I can't remember if I think we may have talked about this a little bit before we were on, that it's my fault. I introduced him to it. I don't even remember exactly when. I maybe just played a couple songs and he thought it was great. It is now the only thing he wants to listen to whenever we are in the car. Like, to the point, I mean, I don't think it's possible to get me sick of it, but it is, well, he made his first playlist. He made his first ever Spotify playlist, and it is entirely Weird Al.
Fantastic.
And then some Michael Jackson, and some other things, but almost not entirely, but mostly Weird Al songs, and then the originals, that they are parodies of, and we will listen in the car, and sometimes the game is to try and figure out whether it's the original or the Weird Al as it's playing. Like, like Eat It and Beat It sound almost identical until the fart noises come in, and then it's the Weird Al version, obviously. Yes. And things like that. And so and obviously I'm thrilled that he is listening to the exact same music that I listened to when I was 8, except that when I was 8 it was new. And for him this is like almost 40 years old, and I was thinking about how that would be like if when I were 8 getting obsessed with music from like the popular music from World War II.
Oh,
It's just so long ago.
I was going to say
It's
the Beatles,
yeah.
but you're right. The 80s are
yeah.
longer ago from today than the
Yeah.
60s were from the 80s.
Like twice as long.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like 1982 would be 1942 if you were in 1982. Does that make sense what I just said?
It does.
Yes.
And I'm
Yeah.
horrified by that reality.
I mean, it makes no sense, but that's what the numbers show. You know, and I was like, that's so funny that this is what he wants to
Are you
listen to
saying you
more
didn't
than
have an Andrew sister phase?
Well, I mean, if the Andrew Sisters did ridiculous parodies with fart
Yeah.
noises, I'm sure I would have been, all over that when I was 8.
So what immediately strikes me about your son's experience with Weird Al that I didn't have was that I had much less access to the original song. And there were songs, even though I kind of knew they were parodies, there were truly songs I got to college without knowing the non-Weird Al version.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's certainly, I think that's true for him too, outside of like the Michael Jackson ones, because I think I turned him on, to that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's, so as I said before, it's my fault that he's apparently so, well, that's not true. I've introduced him to lots of things like taking showers or eating food that isn't mac and cheese, and he hasn't gotten obsessed with that. So it is also, it is partially his fault. But no, without a doubt, he loves a lot of it with no awareness of the song. And it's also made me realize that some of these songs, obviously there's a wave of nostalgia for me because it's something we certainly didn't have in the time was like Spotify shuffle play.
Right.
And you just don't know what year of your childhood is just going to pop up through the speakers next. And so there's all these songs that are coming back to me where I'm like, I had no connection to the song that this was parodying, but this is what I remember. These are the only lyrics I know to this song, even though I know it was a hit before he made it one.
Yeah, I don't think it's Clapton, but the song about Yoda. Yoda, Yoda,
which is
Yoda.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know Lola.
Lola, yeah.
Which I didn't know. I didn't know about Lola until high school or college,
Right.
probably. Yeah.
That was one that I remember that got me the first time I heard it, and I was like, I think I was somewhere where I was like, why are we listening to Weird? Like, I know we're not supposed to be listening to Weird Al in this context, wherever we were. So I was surprised,
Right.
and then it wasn't Weird Al.
Yeah, that happened to us too. We were, I think, somewhere. Yeah, it was the Muzak.
Yeah.
And it was Lola, and I was like, oh, listen, do you hear that? I mean, I pointed out to him, but he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And he wasn't impressed that, so what? So what? That song also was another song. It wasn't as good. Yeah. And the truth is, I think that's testament to that Weird Al has, I think part of why I still feel connected to it is because he's still around and still, he embodies, like obviously I could identify with him very much because it's the silly stuff I would have wanted to do, or that any kid, especially like 10 or 12-year-old kid would come up with that idea, but then he actually saw it through, and to the highest degree of professional, musical talent, production quality, etc. And it just kept going. He's outlasted
Everyone.
Everyone. And so he embodies that idea of the, forgive me, but the nerd, the nerds make good in the long run. They're the ones who will, who are the ones to really, hook your wagon to, because they'll be around and just get better.
And he he's been touring for 40 years. He puts on a tremendous live show. He continues to create new music. I think his original music, his like polkas, the stuff he does that's original and silly doesn't get enough. Like he and his band are incredible musicians.
Yeah, and some of his music it's a really good point because he's known obviously as a parodist. Is that a word? Is that is that the personal form of one who makes parodies? He's parodies, but his original music, almost all of it is he's a master of pastiche, right? And pastiche is that I'm not a music person, but that it's like a parody skewers something, or kind of makes fun of something, but pastiche is like in the style of, and sort of celebrates it in that way, and you don't even always notice it, but there's a reason why his original songs can be catchy because you're like, oh, this sounds like, this group, but it's but it's different. And yeah, I agree. And listening to it through my 8-year-old's ears, if that's the way, because he loves the original stuff. Whereas I think I was more like, oh, I want to hear what did he do with the latest hit song?
Right.
What did he, but yeah, over the long term, I've come to appreciate his wide-ranging musical talent and just the joy. There's joy in it. Even it's, a lot of his stuff, it's about TV and movies and obviously food. And so it may not seem sophisticated, but there is a sophistication there. There is, in some cases, even commentary
Right.
Underneath. And so, when you're known for parodying or pastiching, now I know that's not a verb, but, taking what's ever in the culture and tweaking it and representing it, then you're going to stay relevant.
Right.
You're going to stay relevant to whatever is current. So
Yeah, I'm going to pull up his website just to have something to reference other than just my brain.
And I want to hear I know we were texting earlier. I think you said it was the funniest thing, because I think when I said, I was like, oh, you said most guests are like, they freak out and like, what favorite thing can they pick up? And I'm trying to think of things I can talk about. Like, we've covered some of the Jewish stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm into theater or sports, and why I think sports and theater are the same, and that people who will love one should love the other. And I'm like, that sounds very broad. And then I was like, or we could just talk about Weird Al Yankovic. And the first thing you responded, you said, I love Weird Al. I broke my glasses at a Weird Al concert in 1996, which I thought was just the perfect response to the perfect way to say, I am also a Weird Al fan.
I had an internship between my freshman and sophomore year of college. So summer of 1996 in San Francisco, and working on a cross-country bicycle trip.
Oh, wow.
And one of the big, I think the couple of the big cultural things I did that summer, one was I saw the new play Picasso at the Lapine Agile by Steve Martin. And
wait, you saw that in San Francisco?
In San Francisco in 1996.
I think I was in college out there, and then not saying we were at the same performance, but I bet we saw the same production.
Because I think it was the first year of the production. I feel like it was a very new play at the time.
Yeah, we can Google that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, definitely.
And I saw Weird Al perform at a theater that, the posters they had up were like Janis Joplin, Grateful Dead, this amazing theater in San Francisco with an incredible musical legacy. And I went to see Weird Al there. Nobody from work, none of the other interns wanted to go with me because they were all Ivy League people. And I was, a Millikan. I was a Midwest kid in San Francisco for the summer. And so I went alone. And Weird Al was singing One More Minute. And at some point during that song, he pulled off his boxer shorts, out of his pants, made eye contact with me because I was the only teenage girl in the mosh pit of the standing room only.
Right.
I was very tall, 5'11", and really the only girl, one of the only girls down by the stage. Makes eye contact with me, these boxers are for you, throws them at me, and then a young, early teenage boy, so probably 12, 13, age appropriate to be at a Weird Al show, jumps up, grabs the boxers, and as he's coming down, his elbow hits my face and breaks my glasses.
Oh my! So I don't mean to critique your storytelling, but I think describing that as I broke my glasses is sort of burying the lead of that story. I think it's I love Weird Al. I was injured attempting to grab his airborne
shorts.
Boxers. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, oh my God. Wow. You are, I do not have any stories like that. Any Weird Al stories like that. That's hilarious.
Yes.
But I'm sorry for I'm sorry that it, hope that the rest of the concert was a little blurry, or that or that you were able to get your
Yeah, I feel
glasses
like
repaired quickly. Yeah.
it was the 90s when glasses were all made of wire, so breaking them really just meant bend them back in place.
Got it.
It wasn't acrylic
Didn't
frames
snap
that
in
snapped
half.
in
Yeah,
half.
right.
Yeah.
Right. No tape on the bridge. Okay.
No.
That's good.
Although it would have fit in great.
I was about to say though, it just would have been, this is why it's a perfect Weird Al story, because it's somehow if you get like if you get, someone lands on you and you break your glasses at some other rock concert, it's not as joyful a story.
No.
This sort of really seems like that's where you want that to happen if it has to happen.
And it's one of like two. I also had a glasses incident at Blue Man Group.
Okay.
In New York.
Interesting.
I don't know, like winter of 93, 92 or 93, I think we went to New York to see Blue Man when it was still like off Broadway.
Okay.
And they end the show with this like toilet paper tornado.
Oh, yes.
From the
yes,
stage to the balcony.
Yeah.
And I turned around to look at it, and it's like whoosh, toilet paper, whoosh, toilet paper, and then whoosh. And my glasses just got pulled off my face into the toilet paper.
Like swept away.
Did
you recover them?
I did.
Okay.
Because at that point, people going to Blue Man shows were very nice. And so somebody caught them and passed them back up. But it was, those are my two primary glasses incidents at shows.
Oh my gosh. I also grew up wearing glasses, which is, I think that's also part of the, I put my contacts in today because for, it's a podcast.
Right.
So I don't want to, you don't want to wear your glasses on a podcast. No. So I think that was part of why I identified with, Weird Al. My favorite athletes were ones that wore glasses. Like Daryl Porter of the Kansas City Royals was a catcher, and he wore glasses. It made similar to, like, it meant that I too could be something, right? And not that glasses was some horrible, disability, but it's just sort of like, it was representation.
Yep.
It was seeing that. And I really thought about trying, I feel like there could be a like a short story collection or a video and something of incidences where glasses were involved, that like she'll hate me telling even a story, but when my wife was a kid, she had glasses and they got broken. She got hit by a foul ball behind home plate. And it's a family story that we tell. And I'll have to think there must be some good story that involved me losing or breaking my glasses, because I feel like there's a way in. There's a way into a story if you could just put together a bunch of stories of times when you broke your glasses.
Well, I think
you've got two. Three more becomes a trend, a collection. Yeah.
That when you start with essentially A Christmas Story, the movie, don't shoot your eye out. How important the glasses are. Glasses are so expensive. They're hard to replace. They're like more important than your braces. Like, don't break them. So at some level, A Christmas Story was the early warning system that even beyond what my parents told us was like, you watched it and the devastation of him breaking his glasses. I think there are stories about glasses to be told.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a great metaphor. I'm not exactly sure what the metaphor is, but something about being able to see and see. Yeah. We'll work on that. We'll work on that. Can be another broken glass. It could be, you can do a whole, that broken glasses was a favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying for me, but maybe someone else can come on and talk about that. Yeah.
Thinking about Weird Al, have you ever seen him perform live?
I have. I've been to one concert. It didn't happen for me until I was like 40. Mm-hmm. It was I was at the most, well, not the most recent one, the one tied to his last album, to Mandatory Fun. Mm-hmm. So the Mandatory World Tour came through Kansas City. I was in about like 2015, I think. And yeah, it was thrilling because I had never, in some ways, more thrilling because it was all the joy that that my preteen, like 10-year-old self would have loved. But now I actually got to be there with the fact that he, this is 30 years later into his career, and got to know that. And he came out into the audience and sang, and he like sang right in our right in our face. We have
love it.
so that I have a picture. I didn't exactly meet him, but there's a picture where our faces are, like 6 inches apart. And so there's a photo of us together, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And that was a lot of fun. And actually that was the friend I was supposed to go with wound up not being able to go at the last minute. It was supposed to be a friend and I, and then this other, a couple. And then, so my wife wound up so it became this like couples. I was thinking about you saying you saw Weird Al in San Francisco at this club that has like we had this like sort of nice, like, grown up, couples night out. And then we went to Weird Al.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my wife may not admit it. It's something she did like for me, but I think she had a good time. I mean,
it's hard.
It annoys
to
her
have
when
a
our son
bad
wants to turn
time
it
at
on.
a Weird Al show.
It is, yeah.
Because they're just
it's impossible. Yeah.
They never stop. They don't stop dancing. The costume changes. Like, it's really a remarkable. He is an entertainer.
Yes. So I have a question. So he is currently, because this is something I need to figure out whether we're going to do this. So he's coming. He's currently either it has just started or is starting his. I think it's the second iteration of, and I'm forgetting the exact title because it has like 7 adjectives in it, but it's something like ill-advised something vanity tour, and he did it a few years, like pre-COVID. He did it where it's just him and the band in smaller, like more like orchestral concert venues, and only the originals, like no parodies. I feel like, I mean, it's the deep cuts for the quote unquote true fans, but I haven't decided yet whether have a chance to go in September, and I haven't. I feel like I'm losing my authority as someone who came on a podcast called Finding Favorites and talking about where's my favorite and debating whether to go. But it's whether I take my 8-year-old, if he's not going to get to hear Eat It, is he going to be disappointed? It's a challenge.
Right.
And I'm not, so I don't know why I'm putting that on you. I'm transferring my burden.
So I will be at a bat mitzvah in Israel. I'm just checking the dates. July 15th and 16th is when they're in Chicago. That's when it's in Chicago.
Yeah.
At Symphony Center. Center. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so you can't even go and then tell me what I mean.
No,
I would have to buy the tickets by then. But
my sister's gone. She and her husband have been to a couple Weird Al shows. I think at the first time they went, I don't think they took either of their kids because they were basically like, these are adult price tickets, so we're going to have a date night.
Right.
But I think the youngest is at an age where he would really enjoy it. But you also get to see Emo Phillips do a set because he's got Emo Phillips opening for him.
Yeah.
So that's because I would go if I wasn't going to be in Israel.
Right. And the tour is not going to Israel, right? Weird Al will not be performing in Israel while you're still there.
Not while I'm still there, no. No.
But I'm curious if he's played Israel.
I don't know.
This is a
really, I'm just like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
Yeah. I don't think this tour is going there because I feel like some Israelis would love him and others would just not stand for it.
Israelis love, and the final night is at Carnegie Hall. How fun is that?
Oh, that's right. I read, it'll be his first time ever performing at Carnegie Hall. So see, that's
really cool.
Which it only took 40 years,
Oh, and he's playing at the Kennedy Center in DC.
Okay.
That might be a fun one to like travel for.
That's a good point. Yeah.
To go and be like, oh, I'm going to Washington, D.C. to the Kennedy Center. What are you going to see? Weird Al.
No, I was listening to some of your old as you know, I was listening to some of your past podcasts, and one of the ones, and I apologize, I'm forgetting who you were, talking to, but you had a conversation about that idea of traveling for experiences.
Yes.
And how you kind of get to a certain level of maturity in life when you realize, no, that makes sense, and that I think it was about Hamilton. That's why
yes.
I think it was you've traveled for Hamilton,
I have.
right? Which is by the way another thing I love about Weird Al is that he has a close relationship with Lin-Manuel Miranda, who cites Weird Al as like one of his influences, yes. When the Hamilton polka was released was one of the greatest days of my life, but also it's something that both of my kids insist on playing because they're very into Hamilton too.
When I think
I'm
about
playing that all the time, yeah.
celebrity friend groups or celebrity friend groups that I am envious that I am not a part of. One of them is the original cast of Hamilton because it includes Weird Al. Because like Len got to meet his heroes and Len and Weird Al got to become friends. And I truly, I think I felt envy when they started revealing that they were friends. And that is a weird thing to feel about a celebrity friendship.
So you mean you wish that you had, like, if you had been in the original cast of Hamilton, then you would have gotten to meet Weird Al?
Yeah.
No, you're saying, oh, okay.
I
do. That's
the original cast of Hamilton. They're like puppies. They love each other so much. They're always lifting each other up. They just seem to have a lot of fun together. It seems like it's a fraternity that is continued. And I just sort of, there's a certain era of like UCB comedians that I would like wish I was in their friend group, you know?
Right.
I don't know.
That's
It's
true.
weird.
Yeah,
it's a weird reaction.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Like right. Because as much as I was into like the rest of the world, most of the world into Hamilton, like it didn't occur to me to be part of the cast because I do not have any, what would you call it? Musical, singing, dancing.
Oh, I don't have
acting,
any
really
skills to be in the cast.
No. Oh, no. But I never thought of that either. But it would be great to be part of that group after the show when the Weird Al's and the, heads of state and other just come back and say hi. Like, so maybe, if you get in that group, right, so you're friends. You don't have to be in the cast. You don't have to be in the show.
Right.
But you're friends, so you're there when
Right.
all the people that make a point of coming back to see how much they love the show, you can hang out with them. That's, okay, I could, well, now I'm envious of that as well.
Yeah, that was, the Weird Al Lin-Manuel friendship is one that I was, like, it just was like a pure good celebrity friendship that I'm happy for.
Yeah. And it's also, and maybe this is another, it was oddly, as a Weird Al fan, it was oddly validating because everyone recognizes Lin-Manuel Miranda as a genius. Right. And I'm like, but Weird Al is one of this genius's influences. Yeah. So clearly we've also been following a genius for 40 years. Right. Yeah.
Did you ever see the Weird Al Behind the Music on VH1?
No, I need to track that down. I'm sure it's online somewhere. No, it's one of the few things I have, like old VHS copies of like the Complete Al, which was I don't know if you ever saw that. That was the like self-produced one from like 1986 where, and again, to your point earlier about not really knowing there's a world outside of it, like it's, Compleat, which was a play on the Complete Beatles, which I don't know if I knew I'm sure my parents talked about the Beatles when I was, like 8, but not even getting that he was playing off that. Right. And so no, but I became aware of that, and I didn't see it at the time,
It is great.
Yeah, I mean,
because there's a scene where Judy Tenuta, if you remember her. Okay.
Oh yes, of founder of Judaism. It's one of her shtick. Yeah, that was like one in her. Yeah, that she was going to start her own religion. She was going to call it Judaism.
Amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she has because they did his Behind the Music before he got married, and he was kind of like famously single, and she was. And it's a very funny Behind the Music because the arc of a Behind the Music, for people who haven't seen it, is telling the story of a band, and the climax is always the scandal, the fight, the argument, the drugs that bring them down. And it's just all these people talking about how there are no scandals, there's no drugs, there's none of the friction that and it was also before his parents died, and that was a tragic accident.
Yeah. That was, I remember when I heard about that, it almost, I mean, not to make light of it in any way, but when it was, I saw him being interviewed about it not that long ago, like a few years ago. And he talked, and apparently they passed away. Was it carbon monoxide poisoning from a fireplace that was left on or something? Or I guess a gas fireplace, which just, again, I'm not trying to make light of it, but for a brief second, it sounded like the kind of ridiculous thing he said, right?
Like it seemed like a bit.
Yeah, like I lost my, I lost in she was, died in an eggplant avalanche or something. Like something, you're like, what? Wait, they both died because of, wait, no, what? And then you're like, oh my God. And then you realize it's not a joke because it's not the least bit funny. And then also like, okay, that's possible, but oh my God, how crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Sorry, I interrupted your, where you were making a point.
Oh, but Judy Tenuta, because I was just kind of placing the behind the music. So it was before he was married. His parents were still alive. So Judy and other people were trying to figure out, like, if he ever dated, what was the story there? Like, how was it that he never had, like, a romantic scandal? And I just remember, like, Judy's scene in that being very funny.
I will have to go back and find that.
Yeah. No, I'll see if I can find it on YouTube and link to it in the show notes, because it was...
Okay, great.
Because it was created by the behind the music people. It was a real episode of TV.
Like so it wasn't a pair. It wasn't even though they made it. It wasn't. It was straightforward. Like it wasn't done as a heightened.
It's straight.
Like was the joke like yeah.
Yeah, it's straightforward, but the joke is
that there was no scandal.
There's no scandal. There's no fall from grace.
Impossible. It was impossible not to have the tongue in cheek a little bit because this wasn't. Yeah. Well, and actually, and I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet. But just a couple days ago, the trailer, there's, about the Weird Al biopic, the Daniel Radcliffe,
yes,
the Daniel Radcliffe vehicle, and the trailer for it just came out, I think 2 or 3 days ago, and you don't see much in it. You just see, and that's the big question around that too. Is it going to be, because apparently it's inspired by, there was a Funny or Die fake trailer for a Weird Al biopic a few years ago, and what I've read is that inspired this full-length one, but it's unclear. And that one was obviously you made me think of it because of this behind the music. That was a heightened, right? That was like the true story, right? But like, and it's hard to tell from the trailer if it's going to be like this heightened, rock star biopic, or if it's going to be more of a straightforward. It'll probably be in between, kind of like the Complete Al was, or where it's like it's fat, it's the outline of the story is all facts, but then it's played up. If I put on glasses and a wig and a mustache and a Hawaiian shirt, I think I would look at least as much like Weird Al as Daniel Radcliffe seems to. So that's why part of it is, I don't know. It's just, it's again, it's more testament to the fact that you have this actor. I think in one of the press releases or something I saw where, the quote from Weird Al was that, so thrilled that Daniel Radcliffe has agreed to play to take on the role that future generations will remember him for. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that this will supersede Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It's just it's just such a weird mix.
It's so weird. It's so great.
It's weird.
Yeah. And it's going to be streaming.
Yeah, like on Roku,
which will be great.
So, yeah. So whenever that comes out.
I did get to do a photo op with Weird Al once.
Okay.
Because when he tours without Emo Phillips, he does hire local comics to open for him.
Okay.
And a friend of mine got hired to open for Weird Al.
Oh, wow.
And took me as his +1 to one of the shows.
That's awesome. Was this in Chicago? Or?
It was in a suburb.
Okay.
And so I got to go backstage and get a picture and say hello. And he was very nice. And that's the story.
Yeah. And so, and you didn't, and I'm assuming this was definitely post 1996. So you didn't bring up.
I didn't. This was probably 2003, 2004.
Yeah. So you didn't remind him of the awkward time where he tried to give you his underwear, which led to the damaging of your glasses.
Yeah, I was like, hey, so Al, Mr. Yankovic.
Yeah, I guess it's not the right forum.
Do you remember making eye contact with a gangly teenager at a show in 1996 and leading to an injury? Do you remember that? Because here's the lawsuit. The statute of limitations is not up.
Yeah, you'll probably have to be more specific. Probably that may have happened 5 or 6 times in the 90s to him at least. So
yeah. So you're trying to figure out, do you take your son to the ill-advised?
Yeah, well, and actually, one of the things is, okay, so So it's mostly sold out. And so like on StubHub and stuff, the prices for even like the balcony seats, because here in Kansas City, it's at the Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts, which is like our big, it's, where the symphony and the ballet are the resident companies. And, but there are like front row seats that, I mean, they're like $300 but they're like the VIP seats that include a
meet and greet.
I think like a meet and greet. And given that the like, quote unquote, that the cheap seats are now, 2 or 3 times their face value on, is the only way to get them. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I guess, I don't know. Maybe we may have to, I have to check after this. I may just have to go see if those seats are still available.
Yeah.
This was before
fun.
Yeah. But they're kind of just like bar bat mitzvah lines or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I went to a meet and greet once with Dr. Drew.
Oh, okay.
From Loveline before he was like off the derrick, before he was like banana pants. And I used that photograph on my New Year's cards that year. And I was like, Happy New Year from Leah and Dr. Drew.
Oh, wow.
So you can have a lot of fun with celebrity photos is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Happy Hanukkah. Yeah. Happy Hanukkah from the Wishnas and Weird Al Yankovic, not Jewish.
Yeah.
Right? In parentheses, not Jewish. Yeah. Because that was a blow too when I found out he wasn't Jewish. Not although Yankovic was never. It's it's more Slavic.
Yeah.
But I do because you mentioned that at the beginning of that I was like, yeah, that's right. That was I remember that. Or it's like, well, but it's okay. He's still I'm nerdy and I wear glasses, so we're still simpatico.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say if they're a coworker this week was like, Leah, you're going to a ton of shows. Because I saw Letterkenny live last weekend, which is a Canadian comedy show, sitcom that does a live show tour also. Tonight I go to Boston to see a doubleheader of the Doughboys podcast, which is a podcast about fast food.
Oh, I've heard of that. I haven't listened to it, but that's...
not kid friendly. Do not listen to it when your kids are in the car.
Okay.
Do not.
Well, I'm not allowed to... That would mean turning off Weird Al.
Right.
So I'm not. So it'll be a while at least before I'm allowed to listen to anything with them. Him, at least Abe in the car. Yeah.
Yeah. And I went to LA to see How Did This Get Made, like a month ago. But I think pre-pandemic and pre-cancer, I would take a pass on going to live shows. But I think I really, and Hamilton is what like melted my heart and made me just like, it's more fun to be a fan. It's more fun to love things and be a fan, and whether or not you can afford to attend shows and travel is beside the point. But it's nice to just be excited and find joy in something and talk to people about it. And I feel like I'm really just trying to embrace that because I have a much more of a sense that my personal future is not infinite, and I want to do things and I want to see people and I want to like do the fun things and do the meaningful things. So I would say get the ticket.
Okay. I'm gonna go look right after this.
Even if you go alone. It's more fun to go with people, but
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would go. It's the weekend of my birthday. I didn't tell you that. See,
come on.
This is just a
Victor.
This is just a therapy. This is a therapy session where, in my defense, when I was deciding whether or not to get the tickets, this is before I knew I was going to come on essentially my first full podcast interview talking specifically about Weird Al.
Yeah.
So I realize now how weak I look talking about it in this tense. But I'd like the context in which I was struggling with the decision was just a private, internal thing where, and now that I've said it publicly, it helps me realize, like, for all the reasons and most of all the touching point you just made about being among other people, particularly about being a fan, about going to and I have to admit, I did not consider that aspect of it. Going to be in a place where you're, because this isn't always the case with even other, certainly like other types of concerts or even other bands where there's just the passion in the room for this thing that the truth is, despite how that not everyone, it's not, especially this type of concert, it explicitly says it's not for everyone,
Right.
not even every Weird Al fan. Okay. So yes, there's been clarity,
Good.
this is yes, I think some real growth has already happened in this, because when you do a podcast about Weird Al, that's what you're hoping for is personal growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Personal growth, a commitment to put your butt in a seat.
Yes. Yes.
To support the return of live performances.
Yes. To realize that, as you said, life is not infinite for any of us, and none of us knows, when we would get to do something that we have a chance to do a second time.
So I think it's, and it's not to say that people have different priorities. So whatever their priority is of like a fun thing, I'm much more likely to do the thing now than I was certainly in my 30s. The 2 years without seeing a live show, really, I've gone back to theater. I got my Broadway in Chicago subscription up and running again. So I'm seeing Fiddler on Tuesday. I've never seen Fiddler, anything. I've never seen the movie or even any version of it on stage.
So do you know the story? You know the story or the songs, or?
Yeah, I know Sunrise, Sunset, and If I Were a Rich Man. It's a family of Russian Jews. There's a pogrom, and there's a wedding.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
That's basically it, right?
Yeah. Yes. Those are not necessarily in that order.
Yeah.
But yes, but those. Well, no. See, now I'm jealous of because someone said this to me once. I can't remember. Oh yeah, I was in college before I saw Citizen Kane.
Okay.
And we don't have to worry about spoiler alerts for Citizen Kane, right? Because that's kind of the point of my story.
Years old at this point.
Yes, at this point it just about is. And I just didn't know anything about it. I mean, I knew it was like one of the great films but somehow I did, Rosebud.
You didn't know who wrote?
No idea.
Oh.
And so we're sitting in this, and it's in some like, classic art. I mean, it was in a movie theater, right? So it was in one of these like art houses that is showing, kind of a place that's showing Citizen Kane in the 90s, right?
Yep.
And I think it might have been a date or something. I can't remember. And at the end of the movie and it's like Rosebud, I was that guy. And I go, I think I verbalized, oh, it's the sled. And five people turned around with this look, and actually that reminds me of another story. I went to see Miss Saigon for like the 7th time when I was living in New York, and there was this guy we were like had cheap seats, were in the back row, and there's this older gentleman with his much younger date, and I think he was wearing, like, he was a veteran. I think he was wearing and he's kind of like throughout the whole play, he's kind of explaining the context of the Vietnam War, like a little too loudly, but that's what happens when you sit in the back row. And then the scene, have you seen Miss Saigon? I don't want to give away another, I'll tell,
you can give it away. I have talked about it on the podcast before. I saw it's not a renewal. What's it called when they do the new tour?
Revival?
I saw the Revival tour,
yeah, and
I left at intermission.
Oh, okay. Well, then you would have seen this because it's near the end of Act 1 where, and without spoilers, again, well, I think this show is now
based on Madame Butterfly.
30-something. It's based on Madame Butterfly. It's
30 years old.
30 plus years. Yes. So where I'm blanking on the character's names. Tui is the bad guy, the now communist who was originally promised to marry Leah Salonga was the original. I'm forgetting the character. Anyway, and near the end he's about to like take her, the boy, the baby that she's had with the American GI. He's like threatening to kill him, and she pulls out his gun and shoots him. And this is like a climactic moment, but it's not quite, Rosebud sled level, like everybody knows it's coming. It's still just like this moment. And the guy down the row from us really loudly goes, "Oh, she got him." Like really loudly, like to the point where the entire balcony that we're in, it took me back to the Citizen Kane. Everybody like turns and is like, so, but the whole point of this is like, you're going to go see Fiddler on the Roof for the first time, which is something I can never,
at 45,
I can never, I don't even, like, whenever I first saw it, I probably didn't appreciate that it was the first time I'm seeing Fiddler on the Roof. So relish that, like, that's great that most people do not have, just like I was apparently the only person in the country who
didn't know who Rosebud was.
Right, who had the joy of like the twist at the end.
Yeah. Do you remember a world of pop culture references opening to you once you knew who Rosebud really was?
Probably. I mean, not like, I think it's more just like once I knew that, then yes, now that you mention it, it was more just, I missed this and I missed that. I think I'd heard Rosebud.
Right.
Like I knew Rosebud was a thing.
Right.
It wasn't like I knew, Citizen Kane and Rosebud.
Yeah.
Rosebud is pop culture shorthand for a twist or something or a secret.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay, it was the sled, but I just didn't know it was the sled.
There's I don't know if you ever listened to the the podcast Unspooled.
No, I haven't.
It's Paul Scheer and Amy Nicholson.
Okay.
And the first 100 episodes, they were watching the top 100 movies as set out by like AMC. And part of their conversation about the movies was identifying the Simpson references. Like the references that Simpsons had made back to this movie. And whether or not there was one. So like Rosebud, I think there's for sure at least one, if not many, Simpsons references.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Well, that's something else about me that I'm a little ashamed of, but that everybody might. I am woefully undereducated, if that's the right word, I haven't seen very many Simpsons episodes.
It's okay.
I'm Seinfeld. I'm not up on Seinfeld. Friends. I'm some of these, when you were talking about culture references, and my excuse was that, and I guess for Simpsons it's still the case because it's still going on, is that I could never catch up.
Right.
Like that was my excuse. I can't spend time with this, and so even back when Seinfeld was on, like, and now obviously, of course, every episode I watch is one I'm catching up,
right.
But I just haven't done it, and I figure I don't know if I'll be able to outweight these references, but people are more like they're surprised, and then I'm shamed for it, that I don't like, what, you don't know that? Like, I think it disappoints people because they're like, shoot, I had a really
funny joke, and you don't get
I had
the
a really,
punchline.
I had a really funny, I was going to make my point in a really funny way, and now that you don't get it, I'm not even sure how to tell you what I'm trying to say.
Right. Like when
I don't know
people
what to
shout
compare it to.
pivot
Yeah.
at you, you're like, fine, I'll pivot. But you don't know like why it's funny.
Right. It's like, wait, you've lived here for how long and you don't speak English? Come on. How are we going to talk? How are we going to communicate? I don't know how to say this in another language.
Right.
It's Simpsons, so.
I watched The Simpsons
so I have work
when
to
it was
do.
early. Like in high school, I watched it, but I have not kept up. It's impossible.
Yeah, there must be some way to just, I'm sure like for at this point, anything that happens, I'm sure someone has built this database somewhere where you can like just search and find the Simpsons reference word. So I guess so that I could fake it. I could, almost like a translator. I could be like, oh, well, yeah, it's like that time in the Simpsons when blah, blah, blah,
Or you could just say,
I don't have that.
It's like that time in The Simpsons, and let them fill in the blank.
Oh, that's true. Right.
Oh, no, you go first.
Right.
You tell me what
Right.
scene you think it's like.
Right.
So.
That's funny. Good. There's shortcuts then.
Victor, if you were going to recommend someone give Weird Al a try, where do you think they should start?
Interesting. Well, the first thing, I don't know if this is cheating or passing the buck, but like literally just if you have Spotify or one of those and put him on random, because part of the, because this works for 8-year-olds, I'll tell you that much, is you just start, they're like, it's, kind of like, I guess the way Pandora used to be, where you just, you like it, you listen or you skip, and you'll eventually, over the course of not, listening for very long, you'll start to get in. But also if you can find on, it's not going to be instant, right? I mean, would you agree with this? It's not, if you're coming to it as an adult,
right.
And this is like, and I've had the chance to see Weird Al through some friends who did not grow up with it because
they were too busy watching The Simpsons.
Exactly. Well, right. And I don't judge them for not knowing Weird Al, for not, getting around to Weird Al. Like some people were, they weren't nerdy enough to realize how cool it was to get into that. And so it's, for me, it's impossible to extract it from the nostalgia
Right.
growing up with it. And so, and that charm is hard to translate to someone who's just coming. But I think if you start exposing yourself to his, like, even his wacky movies, you know, or like the Complete
UHF
Owl or UHF. Yes. Again, like, that was a failure at the box office, became a cult classic because, you know, nerds play the long game. Like, ultimately it's recognized as a work of genius. And it's a taste you will have to acquire, because it's a wonderful mix of cleverness and seeming lack of sophistication that you kind of have to realize, you know, that takes a different kind of effort to appreciate. But the songs you just like, but there's also an instant hook, because if you find a parody of a song you like,
right,
then you're in, you know. So
awesome.
That's where I'd start. Just get at it. Kind of like with The Simpsons. I don't know which episode you pick. You just have to start watching, right?
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to catch up.
Yes, and I'm not
interested in catching up. So
right.
Would you like for people to follow you online? Are you a Twitter, Instagram, TikToker?
I'm on Twitter and Facebook, because I'm old, right? We're old, so we stay on Facebook. My Twitter is Wishna, you know, because I got my Twitter account, I think, way back when it started, and then, you know, so I didn't come up with any creative handle. I just sort of, kind of like when you're signing up for an email address in college, you're like, oh, I'll just put my name in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm, you know, there, and that would be that.
Great. And people should, we will link to it in the show notes. Check out the Jewish Plays Project. Listen to all of the excerpts. Vote for Tree of Life. That's my message.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds good to me.
Great.
I really appreciate it.
You can follow me online at Chicago Leah on Twitter, at Shy Leah, or at Chicago Leah on Twitter and TikTok, at Shy Leah on Instagram, Finding Faves Pod on Instagram and Twitter. And please review on Apple Podcasts or other apps that you use. The reviews really help people discover the podcast. So, Victor, thank you for joining me today.
Leah, thank you so much for inviting me on.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.